Welcome, and thank you for being here. Tonight, we explore the ancient art of building and sailing a medieval ship. First, find your coziest spot to rest. Let your head sink gently into your pillow and allow your shoulders to fall away from your ears. Take one long, slow breath in, and then let it all go. Where are you listening from tonight? Is it truly evening in your part of the world, or are you just pretending to relax during a brief pause in your perfectly managed chaos? It can be our little secret. If you find comfort in these quiet journeys, a gentle tap of the subscribe button ensures we can always find each other for our next trip. Now that you are settled, let's leave today far behind. The rhythmic sound of a mallet on wood grows clearer, and you can smell the sharp scent of the sea mixing with fresh-cut lumber. You are standing in a bustling port, an apprentice shipwright ready to begin. Your master is waiting, and he has your very first set of tools. The tang of the nearby sea is a constant underlying hum, but here, in the heart of the shipyard, it is overpowered. You draw a deep breath, and the sharp, clean scent of freshly sawn oak wood fills your lungs, so strong it is almost a taste. It is the smell of creation, of forests transformed into vessels that will one day taste that salt. All around you, a harsh mix of sounds creates a working rhythm. The rhythmic rasp of a two-man saw cutting through a log is the heartbeat, punctuated by the sharp clang of a hammer from the blacksmith's shed and the unified grunts of men guiding a massive timber into place with ropes and levers. Your hands, still soft and unaccustomed to this life, feel out of place. You clench them and feel the fine grit of sawdust that has already worked its way under your fingernails. This new world of wood and work is ruled by the master shipwright. You have only seen him from a distance, a formidable figure whose face seems carved from the same tough oak he shapes. His hands are thick and mapped with the calluses of 1,000 splinters and 1,000,000 hammer blows. He moves through the chaos with a quiet purpose, his eyes seeing everything, a poorly angled cut, a lazy swing of a mallet, a moment of hesitation. Men twice your age fall silent when he passes, their work becoming just a little more precise under his gaze. His approval, you understand, is the currency of this place, more valuable than the silver coins you were paid for your journey here. He represents a mountain of knowledge you have just begun to climb. Now that formidable man stands before you, his shadow falling over your workbench. He says nothing for a long moment, simply looking at your soft hands and then at the pile of wood beside you. His silence is heavier than any shout. When he finally speaks, his voice is like gravel rolling downhill. "The ship is a body," he says, his gaze fixed on the half-finished skeleton of the great vessel rising from the stocks nearby. "The keel is its spine. The ribs are its, well, ribs. But the skin," he taps a long plank with a hardened finger, "the skin is held on by its sinews. You will make the sinews." He gestures to the pile of rough-hewn wooden dowels, tree nails, the wooden pegs that hold the planks fast. They must be perfect. With those instructions, he leaves you to your work, and the weight of his expectations settles on your shoulders. The task seems simple enough. Take a rough square of wood and, using a small hand axe and a draw knife, shape it into a smooth, slightly tapered peg. The reality, however, is in the details. You learn to read the grain of the wood, a language of lines and swirls. The master's assistant, a kinder man with a patient voice, shows you how a straight grain means strength, while a swirling grain can hide a weakness that might shear under pressure. You feel the wood with your thumb, searching for the dense, uninterrupted patterns that signify a worthy tree nail. It is a slow, careful process that demands your full attention, a world away from the brute force you see being used elsewhere in the yard. After an hour, your hands begin to ache, and your pile of finished tree nails is pitifully small. An older worker, his face crinkled with a permanent squint, wanders over and picks one up. He squints at it. The guild says oak, always oak. But I worked in a yard once that used black locust, swore it swelled tighter in the salt water. He tosses the peg back onto your small pile. They also said the world was flat. A lot of men swear by a lot of foolish things. He gives you a wry, toothless grin and moves on, leaving you with the unsettling thought that even in this world of solid wood and iron rules, there are still arguments and disagreements. It makes the perfection the master demanded feel even more distant and uncertain. This uncertainty soon takes a more solid form. The master shipwright returns, his steps deliberate and heavy on the wood chip strewn ground. He inspects your small collection of finished pegs, turning one over in his calloused hands. He gives a non-committal grunt, which you take as neither praise nor condemnation. Then he points to 2 stacks of uncut dowel stock that have just been delivered. We need 500 more by week's end, he states, a simple fact that makes your stomach tighten. The wood is your choice. This, he gestures to a dark, heavy-looking stack, is oak, strong as iron, but it will fight your tools every inch of the way. It will be slow, difficult work. Following this, he turns his attention to the other pile. And this is ash, he continues, kicking a lighter-colored piece of wood. It is more pliable. The grain is clean, and your blade will find it an easy path. You will make pegs twice as fast with the ash. He looks from the wood to you, his eyes unreadable. It holds well enough in calm seas, but a true storm? A storm tests everything. He does not tell you which to choose. He simply stands there, waiting, observing. The choice is not just about wood. It is about the kind of apprentice you will be. Will you be the one who does the job quickly, or the one who does it right, no matter the effort? Slow your mind races, weighing the options. The dense, dark oak represents the highest standard of quality, the kind of unyielding strength the master himself seems to embody. Choosing it would be a declaration of your commitment to craft over speed, a way to prove your skill and patience right from the start. It would mean long hours and sore muscles, and your pile of finished pegs would grow agonizingly slowly. But each one would be a testament to your dedication, a small, perfect piece of the ship's soul. The risk is in failure. If you are too slow, you will be seen as inefficient and unsuited for the pace of the yard. On the other hand, The lighter, more cooperative ash offers a different path. Choosing ash would demonstrate that you understand the pressures of time and production. You could create a mountain of tree nails, proving your efficiency and value as a productive worker. It is the practical choice, the one that meets the immediate demand. Yet the master's words about a storm linger in your thoughts. The idea that a choice you make now, here on the solid ground, could lead to a weakness far out on an unforgiving sea is a heavy burden. This path risks being seen as someone who chooses the easy way, who compromises quality for speed, a reputation that could be hard to shake. You feel the master's gaze on you, a silent pressure. The shouts and hammering of the yard seem to fade into the background, leaving only you, the 2 piles of wood, and the decision that will define your first steps on this path. The desire to impress him with your skill wars with the urge to show him your speed. One path speaks of patience and enduring strength, the other of efficiency and immediate results. Your hand hovers over the pale ash for a fleeting moment, the allure of an easier task pulling at you. But the image of the great ship in a storm, tested by wind and wave, solidifies your resolve. You turn away from the ash and walk deliberately to the other stack. You reach down and lift a heavy, dark piece of oak. It feels solid and uncompromising in your grip, a challenge and a promise all at once. You place it on your workbench without a word, picking up your hand axe to begin. You will prove your craft, even if it means proving your endurance first. Across the workbench, you see the master shipwright permit himself a small, almost imperceptible nod before he turns and walks away. As you set to work, the oak proves to be just as stubborn as promised. The blade of your axe seems to bite and skip on the dense grain, and shaving it smooth with the draw knife requires you to put your entire body into the motion. Sweat begins to bead on your forehead, and you pause to wipe it away before it can drip into your eyes. Each finished tree nail feels like a small victory, earned through sweat and concentration. The work is hard, but a strange sense of satisfaction begins to grow within you. You are not just making pegs, you are shaping the very bones that will hold a magnificent creation together. The initial feeling of being an outsider starts to slowly recede, replaced by the rhythm of the work. The rasp of your draw knife finds its place within the larger symphony of the shipyard sounds. You are no longer just an observer watching the chaos. You are a part of it, a small but necessary gear in this giant machine of wood and iron. The raw, clean scent of the oak is no longer just a smell in the yard. It is on your hands, on your clothes, a constant reminder of your purpose here. The weight of the oak and the heft of your tools begin to feel less like a burden and more like the very foundation of your new life. The master shipwright's quiet approval of your work on the tree nails does not earn you rest. Instead, it leads you to a new station in the heart of the shipyard, where the real shaping of the vessel takes place. Here, you are handed an adze, a heavy tool with a curved blade set at a right angle to the handle, designed for carving and smoothing large timbers. Its weight feels foreign and unbalanced in your hands, a clumsy club compared to the simple mallet and chisel you have grown used to. Your first task is to shape a massive, rough-hewn log into one of the ship's floor timbers, the curved pieces that will form the very bottom of its frame. The master demonstrates the motion once, a powerful, controlled swing that bites into the wood, sending a large, fragrant curl of oak spinning away. When you try to copy the movement, the adze jars your entire body. The shock of the blade hitting the wood travels up your arms and into your shoulders, a painful vibration that makes your teeth ache. Your first few swings are clumsy, either skittering off the hard surface or digging in too deeply, leaving ugly, jagged marks. Nearby, another sound joins the rhythm of your work, a faster, more confident thump scrape. It belongs to the rival apprentice, a young man who moves with an easy grace, his adze seeming to dance across the timber. He pauses, leaning on his own half-finished beam, and a small smile plays on his lips as he watches your struggle. The look in his eyes, a mix of pity and amusement, makes a hot knot of frustration tighten in your stomach. You ignore him, turning your full attention to the task. You try to focus on the grain of the wood, just as you did with the tree nails, searching for the path of least resistance. Slowly, a rhythm begins to form. Your swings become less jarring, your cuts more even. The pile of wood shavings around your feet grows, and the air around you smells clean and sharp. You begin to feel the timber beneath the tool, learning how much force to use, how to angle the blade just so. Sweat drips down your forehead, and you pause to wipe it away with the back of your gritty hand, leaving a smear of sawdust on your skin. The salty taste is sharp on your lips, a constant reminder of the effort. The work is hard, your muscles burn, but for a moment you feel a flicker of pride as the rough log begins to take on the smooth, curved shape of a ship's timber. It is in this moment of growing confidence that disaster strikes. You swing the adze with newfound strength, aiming for a long, clean cut along the curve. But hidden just beneath the surface is a dense, unyielding knot in the wood. The blade hits it and skips sideways with incredible force. Instead of a clean shave, the tool gouges a deep, ugly scar into the side of the timber, tearing the wood fibers and leaving a splintered wound. The satisfying thump scrape is replaced by a sickening crack. It is not ruined, not completely, but the flaw is deep and obvious. The timber is now thinner in that spot, a weakness carved into its heart by your own hand. The sudden silence from your work area is deafening. The rival apprentice glances over, his eyes widening slightly before a smirk returns to his face. He says nothing, turning back to his own perfect timber, but his silence is louder than any insult. Your mind races. A part of you, hot with shame, wants to hide the mistake. You could try to smooth it over, working the surrounding area down to match the depth of the gouge. It would make the entire timber thinner, weaker, But perhaps the master, with his countless duties, would not notice. He trusted you with this crucial piece, and the thought of facing his disappointment feels like a physical weight. However, another part of you remembers the master's words about the wood having its own soul, its own strength that must be respected. To hide a flaw is to lie to the ship itself. Admitting the error means facing his anger, the rival's smug satisfaction, and the tedious work of fixing it properly. A process you have seen that involves carefully cutting out the entire flawed section and fitting a new, perfectly shaped piece of wood into its place. You are torn between the immediate relief of hiding your failure and the long-term consequence of building on a lie. The damaged timber lies before you, a monument to your mistake. The choice of what to do next feels heavier than the adze itself. After a long moment, with the sounds of the shipyard pressing in on you, you make a decision that will define not just the timber, but your own character.
You feel the weight of this decision settle in your shoulders, a new kind of burden entirely. It is one thing to shape wood, you realize, and another thing to shape a reputation. You look down at your hands, no longer soft, now covered in blisters and the fine grit of honest labor. Whatever path you have just chosen, you know it is another cut, another mark left upon your own journey. The scent of raw oak seems sharper now, and the rhythmic sounds of the yard feel like a steady heartbeat, indifferent to your small crisis. The ship must be built, and you are just one small part of its creation. Your choices, like the tree nails holding it all together, either strong and true or quick and flawed. You are changed by this moment of failure, understanding now that the most important tools you will use are not made of iron, but of honesty and resolve. The work of shaping individual timbers has paused, replaced by a new kind of energy that pulls everyone in the shipyard toward the water's edge. Instead of the sharp rasp of saws and the chipping of adzes, there is a low murmur of voices and the creak of thick ropes being coiled. The master shipwright walks past you, and his gaze lingers for a moment. Ever since you admitted your mistake with the floor timber, his look has changed from one of simple assessment to something closer to consideration. Because you were honest about your flaw, it seems he trusts your eyes more, not less. He gestures for you to join a small, select group of experienced men standing near a series of massive wooden blocks set low in the mud. Moving to join them, you feel a distinct coolness rise from the tidal flats, a change from the dry, dusty air of the main yard. It brings with it the smell of salt and wet earth, a scent that speaks of the ship's final destination. The group you join is not one of loud boasting, but of quiet competence. These are the men who have done this a dozen times before, but a feeling of ceremony hangs over them. You stand among them, your recent mistake a humbling memory, but your presence here a quiet acknowledgement of your growing skill. This moment is not about individual achievement. It is about the creation of something far larger than any single person.
The master shipwright raises a hand, and a hush falls over the entire yard. At his signal, 24 men lean into thick hemp ropes,
their muscles bunching. Slowly, groaning under its own colossal weight, a single piece of timber begins to move. It is a massive oak beam, longer than 3 carts, so dark with water saturation it looks almost black. This is the keel, the timber that will form the spine of the entire vessel. You watch it slide across greased logs, inch by painstaking inch. The sheer scale of it makes your own work on smaller pieces feel like child's play. This is the foundation of everything, the first and most important piece of the puzzle. As the keel comes to rest just beside the blocks, the master shipwright calls you forward, away from the others. He leads you to the very front of the timber, where its upward curve will one day meet the stem post, the part that cuts through the waves. The keel is the soul of the ship, he says, his voice low and serious, meant only for you. It is the bone that holds all the other parts together. The guild will inspect every inch of our work from this point on, but the sea will be its final judge. This direct instruction, this sharing of essential knowledge, feels more significant than any praise. He is treating you not as a boy who makes mistakes, but as a future shipwright. He then presses something small, cool, and metallic into your hand. You look down to see a single silver coin, worn smooth with time. Find the joint, he instructs, where the stem will be scarfed to the keel. Place it there. It is an old tradition, a payment to the sea for safe passage. Following his direction, you find the carefully cut series of steps that will lock the 2 great timbers together. You push the coin deep into a small opening in the wood, a secret offering known only to you, the master, and the ship itself. It feels like making a silent promise, binding your own fate to the vessel's journey.
Your ceremonial task is not over. The master now hands you a plumb bob, a simple pointed weight on a string, and a ball of chalked line. Your responsibility is not to haul the heavy timber, but to ensure its placement is perfect. The strength of the ribs depends on the truth of the keel, he says, reminding you of the immense pressure now resting on your shoulders. While others provide the force, you must provide the precision. You hold the string, letting the weight settle until it hangs perfectly straight, a true vertical line against which all other measurements will be judged. With the help of another apprentice, you stretch the chalked line from one end of the blocks to the other, pulling it taut. The line hovers just above the wooden supports, a stark white guide in the damp air. You check its alignment with the plumb bob again and again, your heart thumping with a nervous rhythm. A slight error here, a measurement off by the width of your thumbnail, could create a weakness that would only be discovered years from now in the heart of a storm. The rival apprentice is part of the hauling team, his muscles straining, but you realize with a jolt of insight that your quiet, careful task is just as critical as his show of strength. Once you give a firm, certain mod, the master signals the men. With a collective, coordinated grunt that seems to shake the ground, they heave the keel sideways. It rolls off the logs and lands on the blocks with a deep, resonant thud that echoes across the water. The sound is final, a declaration that the ship has truly begun. The chalk line, now directly beneath the immense timber, is hidden from view, its job done. For a moment, everyone is still, catching their breath, and looking at the first piece of the ship, now resting exactly where it belongs. You walk the length of the newly laid keel, running a hand over its damp, rough surface. It feels ancient and powerful, a sleeping giant waiting to be given shape and form. Other workers are already moving, preparing the stem and stern posts, but you linger for a second longer. You look at the place where the silver coin is hidden, a small secret buried in the heart of the oak. It's a strange feeling to know you have played a small but vital part in something so monumental. The master shipwright claps a heavy hand on your shoulder, making you jump. There's a rare, thin smile on his face. "Good work," he says simply, the two words carrying more weight than a whole speech. He then turns to shout new orders, and the shipyard returns to its usual harsh mix of sounds. But for you, something has shifted. The process of laying this great timber, the soul of a ship, has now become a part of your own foundation. The heavy thud of the keel settling onto its blocks still echoes in your memory, a foundational sound that has shifted your place in the world. For weeks, you have worked on the small, repetitive tasks that give a ship its strength, your hands learning the language of wood and iron. The choice you made with the adze to bring your mistake into the light rather than hide it in shadow has not been forgotten. It has followed you, not as a mark of shame, but as a quiet sign of your character. The master shipwright now looks at you differently, his gaze holding a measure of consideration that was not there before. He sees not just a pair of hands, but someone who respects the truth of the wood. This new regard is a heavier weight than any timber you have yet lifted. This morning, instead of pointing you toward a pile of tree nails or a half-finished plank, the master shipwright gestures for you to follow him. You leave the bustling noise of the slipway behind, the rhythmic hammering and sawing fading as you walk toward the timber yard. The ground here is softer, a mixture of dirt and centuries of sawdust that muffles your footsteps. Huge stacks of lumber rise on either side of you, organized by type and age, creating long alleys of deep shade. You find yourself seeking this shade, a welcome relief that cools the back of your neck. The air itself changes, losing the sharp scent of salt and mud, replaced by the deep, patient smell of drying wood, a complex perfume of oak, pine, and earth. It is a quiet, almost reverent place compared to the chaotic energy of the construction site. The master stops before a colossal stack of curved timbers, each one hewn to follow the natural bend of the tree from which it came. The keel is the ship's spine, he says, his voice low as he runs a calloused hand over the nearest piece of wood. These are the ribs.
He gestures for you to touch it. You place your palm against the oak. It is cool and smooth, seasoned by years of waiting. The grain flows in a gentle, powerful arc. You do not force a ship's shape, he continues, his eyes tracing the curve. You find it. You listen to what the tree can offer. Each of these timbers was chosen because its own life grew in the shape we need. To use a straight timber and try to bend it this much is to invite a weakness, a memory of strain that the sea will find. He leads you deeper into the yard, walking with a slow, deliberate pace, as if he is visiting old friends. He is teaching you to see, not just to look. He points out the subtle signs of good timber, the tightness of the grain, the absence of large knots that create weak points, the even color that speaks of slow and proper seasoning. You learn that wood breathes, that it changes with the moisture in the air, and that a ship is never truly finished, but is always in a slow dance with the water it inhabits. This is a different kind of work than shaping a peg or swinging an adze. It is the work of judgment and foresight, of understanding a process that began in a forest long before you were born. The responsibility of it settles on your shoulders, a new and unfamiliar burden. As the master explains how the frames will be joined to the keel, a sharp, hurried voice cuts through the calm. The merchant who is paying for the ship's construction approaches, his fine clothes looking out of place among the wood piles. He mops his brow with a silk cloth, his movements quick and agitated. "Master Shipwright," he says, his voice tight with urgency. "The tides wait for no man, and my profits wait for no ship. The cargo is already purchased. We must have it afloat sooner. The guild masters are asking questions." His eyes dart around the yard, not seeing the quality of the timber, but only the time it represents. He sees delays, not strength, and his presence brings a new tension into the quiet space. The master shipwright gives a slow, deliberate nod, his expression unreadable. He turns from the merchant and looks at you, a silent transfer of focus that puts you at the center of this new problem. He leads you both toward two smaller stacks of curved timbers set apart from the others. "These are the forward frames," he says, his voice even. He places a hand on the first stack. The wood is a deep, rich brown, almost gray with age. It feels dry and light under your fingers. This timber is perfect, seasoned for 7 years. It will not warp. It will not shrink. But the last of the delivery will not be here for another week. His words are simple facts, delivered without emotion, yet they carry the weight of his entire craft. Then he moves to the second stack. The wood here is a lighter, yellower color, and when you touch it, you can feel a faint, cool dampness deep within. It is heavier, still holding the water of its life. "This timber is here now," the master says, his eyes fixed on you. "It is good oak, and the shape is true. But it is too green. It has only seasoned for a single year. If we build with this, the ship will be finished on the merchant's schedule." He pauses, letting the silence stretch. "But as it dries within the hull, it will shrink, it will twist, it will put a great strain on the planks and the rivets, a hidden strain." The merchant shifts impatiently, his gaze pressing down on you, on the entire shipyard, on time itself. You stand between the two piles of wood, the silent master and the impatient merchant. The choice is no longer simple. not a matter of right and wrong like a flawed cut. This is a choice between two different kinds of right. One is the rightness of the craft, the patient, unyielding quality that creates a vessel that can live for 50 years. The other is the rightness of the world of commerce, of seasons and markets and profits, the pressures that allow ships to be built in the first place. A part of you wants to honor your master's teaching, to insist on perfection and argue for the seasoned timber, showing your commitment to the ship's soul. This path risks the merchant's anger and a delay that could harm the shipyard's reputation for speed. Yet another part of you understands the merchant's frantic energy. A ship in the yard earns nothing. You could choose the greener timber, proving you understand these practical pressures. It would be a compromise, a decision to manage a known flaw rather than avoid it. You would be building a secret weakness into the heart of the vessel, a problem that you and the crew would have to face later. The master does not offer his opinion. He is watching you, testing you. He wants to know not only if you can shape wood, but if you can weigh consequences. Can you see the future that lives inside each of these choices? Your mind races, trying to measure the unseen forces at play. The week of delay feels like an eternity under the merchant's glare, yet the years of a ship's life feel even longer. You think of the groan of timbers in a storm, of a single rivet pulled loose by shrinking wood. You also think of idle hands in the shipyard, of the master having to explain a delay to the guild. You reach out, your fingers tracing the grain of one of the greener timbers, feeling the subtle dampness. Then you move to the seasoned stack, feeling the solid, unchangeable strength of it. The difference is not just in the wood, it is in the time they represent. You find yourself torn, a pull between the ideal and the real. The quiet wisdom of the timber yard seems to be on one side, while the noisy demands of the port city are on the other. Finally, you look away from the wood and meet the master shipwright's gaze. You see the deep lines around his eyes, lines carved by a lifetime of making such decisions. It is in that moment that your own path becomes clear. You clear your dry throat, the words forming slowly as you prepare to speak not just for yourself, but for the ship that is not yet born. You choose to argue for the seasoned timber, explaining that a week's delay is a small price to pay for a lifetime of strength. The risk of a strained hull, you reason, is a danger to the crew and the cargo far greater than any missed market day. The merchant sputters, his face turning a shade darker, but the master shipwright raises a single calloused hand to silence him. He does not smile, but a subtle shift in his posture tells you everything. He gives a slight, almost imperceptible nod. He had not been testing your knowledge of wood, but your understanding of responsibility. The merchant continues to protest, his words about contracts and coin falling flat in the quiet yard. The master simply turns his back on him and walks away, leaving you to stand by the wood you have chosen. Alone among the great stacks, you run your hand one last time over the perfectly seasoned oak. A sense of rightness settles over you, as solid as the timber itself. You made a choice not for speed, nor for profit, but for the integrity of the work.
You have begun to understand that a shipwright does not merely build with wood and iron, but with the weight of decisions. You have weighed something more lasting than timber. The ship's skeleton, a stark architecture of ribs and spine, no longer stands alone. A new scent now winds through the shipyard, sharp and medicinal, eclipsing even the clean smell of cut oak. It is the smell of pine tar, heated in great iron pots until it turns into a thick black syrup. You dip a brush made of stiff animal bristles into the pot, and the warmth travels up the wooden handle to your palm. Your fingers, already stained and sticky, feel clumsy as you coat the edge of a long oak plank. The tar clings to everything, a stubborn blackness that promises to seal the wood against the sea. This is the messy, vital work of giving the ship its skin, and the process feels less like construction and more like anointing a body for a great journey. The tar gets on your clothes, in your hair, and you know the smell will follow you home for weeks to come. Your honesty about the gouged floor timber weeks ago did not go unnoticed. The master shipwright approaches you not with a command, but with a quiet instruction. He gestures with his chin toward the very section of the hull where the repaired timber now sits, a subtle patch visible only to a woodworker's eye. He tells you to begin planking there. This is not a punishment, but a test of trust. He is giving you the responsibility of covering your own mistake, of ensuring the planks that lie over it are fitted with absolute perfection. You feel a knot of pressure tighten in your gut, but it is mingled with a surge of pride. He trusts your hands. This small gesture means more than any praise, placing you in a critical position on the forward hull, where the ship will meet the force of the waves. Across the curve of the hull, the rival apprentice is already at work, his movements quick and sure. He hammers with a rapid, almost frantic energy that makes your own deliberate pace feel slow. You see a flicker of a smirk on his face as he glances your way, a silent challenge that you choose to ignore. Your focus must be on the wood in front of you. Because you successfully argued for the properly seasoned timber, the plank you now lift is a joy to handle. It is heavy but balanced, with no hint of the warping or twisting that greener wood would have. This makes your task easier, as the wood is predictable and willing to bend to the ship's curves without fighting back. Your past decision is now a physical advantage you can feel in your muscles and see with your eyes, a direct reward for prioritizing patience over speed. You and another apprentice hoist the tarred plank into place. The technique is called clinker built, a term the master explained by overlapping his calloused hands. Each plank rests upon the one below it, creating a series of small reinforcing ridges that run the length of the hull, much like shingles on a roof. The top edge of your plank settles onto the lower one with a satisfying thunk, a sound the shipwrights call the clinker's kiss. It's a moment of perfect alignment, where two separate pieces of wood become a single stronger unit. Getting this fit just right is an art. Too tight and the wood might split under pressure.
too loose, and no amount of caulking will keep the sea out. You run your sticky fingers along the seam, feeling for the flawless overlap that signals a job well done. Now begins the ringing chorus that will define your days. You take a hot iron rivet from a small charcoal brazier tended by a boy, its end glowing a dull cherry red. You push it through a pre-drilled hole in both overlapping planks. On the inside of the hull, another apprentice, the holder-on, presses a heavy, dimpled hammer called a dolly against the rivet's end. Your job is to hammer the outside head, flattening it into a wide, secure dome. The sound is a sharp, percussive clang that echoes inside the cavernous hull. You develop a rhythm, drive the rivet, feel the resistance from the dolly, and shape the head with quick, precise blows. It is a partnership conducted entirely through sound and vibration, a conversation in iron between you and the unseen worker on the other side of the wood.
To further seal the seams, you use a material called oakum, which is made from old tarred rope fibers teased apart. You learn to mix this with horse or cow hair, a strange, coarse addition that helps bind the tar and fibers together into a dense, waterproof cord. You then use a wide, blunt chisel and a mallet to hammer this mixture deep into the gap between the overlapping planks. The work is tedious, and your shoulders begin to ache from the repetitive motion. The taste of salt from your own sweat is constant as you labor. This process of caulking, you learn, is just as important as the riveting. A single weak spot, a single inch of poorly packed seam, could doom the entire vessel. It is a powerful lesson in how the largest of creations depends on the smallest of details. As the day wears on, the sun climbs higher, and you seek the sliver of shade cast by the hull itself whenever you pause for a drink of water. Your movements become more automatic, your body learning the unique language of the tools. The hammer feels like an extension of your arm, the chisel an extension of your will. You notice the rival apprentice has already completed a much longer section of the hull than you have. His speed is impressive, but as you glance at his work, you see that the heads of his rivets are not as uniform as yours. Some are hammered too flat, others not enough. It is a small imperfection, one the master might not notice at a distance. But you know it signifies a lack of patience, a focus on quantity over quality. Your careful work, however, is paying off. The seasoned planks you chose to wait for are behaving exactly as they should. They accept the rivets without complaint, the wood fibers compressing neatly around the hot iron without any sign of splitting. This stability makes your job simpler and the result stronger. The master shipwright walks the length of the ship, his eyes scanning the lines of rivets like a scholar reading a difficult text. He pauses at the rival apprentices section, running a hand over the uneven rivet heads. You see him say a few quiet words, and the apprentice's confident posture deflates slightly. The master then moves to your section, his rough palm gliding over the smooth, perfectly spaced domes of your work. He says nothing at all, but a slow, deliberate nod in your direction is all the confirmation you need. You continue your work, the rhythm of the hammer becoming meditative. You are no longer just an apprentice fastening planks. You are weaving a shell, creating a barrier between the world of air and the world of water. Each rivet is a stitch, each plank a thread, in a great garment meant to withstand the fury of the sea. There is a profound satisfaction in this. It is loud, dirty, and exhausting work, but you can see the direct result of your labor taking shape before you. The hull is growing, rising plank by plank, and with it, your understanding of what it takes to build something meant to last, something stronger than the sum of its parts. Near the end of the day, you stand back to look at your progress. A long, beautiful stretch of the hull is now complete, its overlapping planks forming a pattern that is both rugged and elegant. The black lines of tarred seams define the ship's graceful curves, giving it a sense of life and movement even while it sits motionless on the stocks. You touch the wood, feeling the slight warmth still held from the sun, and the faint vibration from a hammer still ringing somewhere down the line. You helped make this. Your care, your honesty, and your judgment are now a permanent part of its structure. You look down at your hands, coated in a black glove of pine tar and dotted with small cuts and blisters. They are no longer the soft hands of a novice. They are the hands of a shipwright, marked by the tools and materials of your trade. The satisfying weight of the hammer, the sticky pull of the tar, the solid feel of a perfectly seated plank. These sensations are no longer foreign. The perfect, ringing sound of a well-driven rivet now lives in your memory, a testament to a day of hard, honest work. The skeletal frame of the ship now stands complete, its curved ribs reaching towards the sky like the bones of some great beast washed ashore. Your work on those timbers and your insistence on using the properly seasoned oak has earned you a quiet respect from the master shipwright. That respect is why you now stand before a pile of long, flexible planks, their clean surfaces waiting to become the vessel's skin. The work has changed, moving from the shaping of heavy frames to the fitting of this outer layer. A different set of smells accompanies this new phase. Instead of the sharp scent of cutwood, a heavy, sticky aroma of pine tar now hangs in your workspace, clinging to your clothes and coating the back of your throat with its pungent taste. This next stage requires a new skill, one the master demonstrates with the practiced ease of a lifetime's work. He calls it the clinker method, a way of building where each plank overlaps the one below it, creating a series of small ridges along the hull. He shows you how this makes the ship both strong and slightly flexible, allowing it to move with the waves rather than fighting against them. Using a wooden mallet, he drives a few iron rivets through an overlapping pair of planks, the metal piercing the wood with a sharp crack. He hands the mallet to you, his gaze steady. There is no praise in his eyes, only expectation. This process, he explains, is what will keep the sea where it belongs, on the outside. Because you admitted your mistake with the adze weeks ago, the master leads you to a crucial section of the hull near the stern. He points down to the very floor timber you scarred and then carefully repaired,
a place where the curve is complex and the fit of the planks must be perfect. "Here," he says, his voice a low rumble, "a ship is only as honest as its weakest part. Show me this part is honest." The assignment is a test and a reward wrapped in one. Nearby, you notice the rival apprentice is given a simpler, straighter section of the hull. He smirks, but you sense a flicker of envy in his eyes. You are being trusted with a challenge he has not yet earned. Working with another apprentice, you learn the rhythm of the task. He helps you lift a long, heavy plank, its surface slick with a preliminary coat of sealant. You press it against the frames, aligning its top edge to overlap the plank already fixed below it. There is a moment of resistance, a slight warping in the wood that you must fight. But then, with a final shove, it settles into place with a deep, satisfying thunk. This sound becomes the signal for the next step. While your partner holds the plank steady with wooden clamps, your job is to secure it permanently. The air around you soon fills with the ringing chorus of hammers striking iron, a harsh mix of sounds that becomes the heartbeat of the shipyard. The mallet feels different now than it did when shaping wood. Driving the iron rivets, you discover, is a delicate balance of force and feel. Hammer too hard, and you risk splitting the precious oak plank you so carefully selected. Hammer too softly, and the rivet will not properly clinch on the other side, leaving a weak point in the hull. You learn to listen to the sound of the strike, a high, clear ring that deepens slightly when the rivet is perfectly seated. It becomes a language your hands understand, a conversation between wood, iron, and your own intent. You ignore the rushed, heavy pounding coming from the rival apprentices section, focusing instead on the steady, precise rhythm of your own work. By midday, your fingers are stained black with the sticky tar used to waterproof the seams, a substance that seems to get everywhere. The grit of it is under your nails and smeared across your cheek where you wiped away sweat. Your back aches from bending over the curved hull, and the repetitive motion of swinging the mallet has left your shoulder with a deep, burning soreness. Yet there is a profound satisfaction in the work. With each plank you add, the ship transforms. It is no longer just a skeleton. It is gaining a body, a solid form that looks like it could truly meet the water. This transformation is not yours alone. As you pause to stretch your aching muscles, you look across the vast curve of the hull and see dozens of others engaged in the same task. The air echoes with the same ringing sound of hammers, all working towards the same goal. It feels less like individual jobs and more like a single, coordinated effort. You are all part of a larger purpose, building something that none of you could ever hope to create alone. The ship is a product of this shared labor, a testament to what many hands working in rhythm can achieve. You take a moment to run your tar-stained hand along a finished seam, feeling the precise overlap of the planks. This is the clinker's kiss, as one of the older shipwrights called it, the point where two pieces of wood meet to form a watertight seal. It seems so simple, yet you understand the immense knowledge behind it. you wonder how many generations of builders learned through trial and disastrous error that this exact amount of overlap held by this specific type of rivet was the secret to surviving a storm. How many ships had to fail for this one to succeed? As the light begins to fade, you drive your last rivet of the day. You stand back and look at the wall of wood you have helped create, a solid, curving shield of oak and iron. The planks fit so snugly that they seem to have grown together, their overlapping edges creating lines of shadow and strength. This is not just wood and metal anymore. It is a promise of safety, a barrier against the deep. You feel the emerging integrity of this vessel in your own tired muscles, a strength sealed in every carefully placed rivet.
The satisfying thunk of the last hull plank settling into place has faded, replaced by a new set of sounds and sensations. The work has shifted from the grand shaping of timber to a task of infinite detail. You are now a caulker, one of the many responsible for making this wooden shell a true vessel, capable of keeping the sea out. Your new tools are smaller, more precise. A specialized mallet with a rectangular head, and a set of steel chisels called caulking irons. In your hands, you hold a thick, greasy coil of something called oakum, old ropes painstakingly picked apart and soaked in pine tar until the fibers are sticky and black. The process of building this ship, you're learning, is one where nothing is ever truly thrown away. This new work forces you into unfamiliar positions, kneeling or lying on your back for hours at a time. A dull ache settles deep in your bones as you press the oily strands of oakum into the thin gap between the overlapping planks. The method involves feeding a line of the fiber into the seam with one hand while tapping it deep and tight with your mallet and iron. The sound becomes a steady, almost meditative rhythm. Tap, tap, tap. Tap, tap, tap. It's a slow, patient craft that cannot be rushed. Each strike of the mallet must be just right, with enough force to compact the fibers into a dense waterproof seal, but not so much that it damages the wood of the planks you so carefully shaped. All around you, other apprentices and journeymen are engaged in the same task, their rhythmic tapping creating a sound like 100 giant woodpeckers. An old sailor, his skin cured like leather from sun and salt, chuckles as he sees you struggling to get the oakum to lay flat. He explains that some shipyards mix animal hair with their tar, swearing it holds better against the constant flexing of the hull at sea. Historical accounts suggest this practice was common, though many masters, like yours, believe pure pine tar and well-spun hemp are superior. This is one of those details that builders argue about endlessly in taverns, a constant debate over the secret to a perfectly dry ship. Following this initial packing of the seams comes the most potent part of the process, sealing it all with hot pitch. A fire is kept burning nearby, a large cauldron bubbling with a black, viscous liquid that smells sharp and acrid. The master shipwright himself oversees the mixture, adding ingredients from unmarked sacks. Every master has his own secret recipe for pitch, a formula believed to give the seal the perfect balance of hardness and flexibility. As a boy brings you a bucket of the steaming stuff,
The fumes alone make your head swim slightly. Your throat feels dry and raspy after only a few minutes of working near it. You carefully paint the hot pitch over the packed oakum, the black liquid sinking into the fibers and bonding with the wood. The fumes are unavoidable. You find yourself blinking away a slight sting in your eyes and frequently turning your head to catch a breath of cleaner air from the sea. You notice the older men have a habit of chewing on a piece of dried ginger root, claiming it settles the stomach and clears the throat against the constant exposure to the pitch. It's a small practical wisdom, passed down through generations of men who have spent their lives breathing this unique, cloying perfume of the shipyard. While you work, you become aware of the sounds from the other side of the hull. The rival apprentice, who always seems to work with a frantic energy, is over there. His mallet strikes are faster than yours, a hurried and uneven pattern that contrasts with the steady beat of the more experienced men. There's a subtle desperation in his pace, the sound of someone trying to prove their speed rather than their skill. You remember his taunts when you were learning the adze, the memory a small, hard knot in your gut. His speed is impressive, but you've learned enough to know that in this task, speed is a dangerous shortcut. Later, as you take a moment to stretch your aching back and get a ladle of water, you walk around the curve of the stern. This brings you past the section where the rival apprentice has been working. From a distance, his work looks clean, the black lines of pitch straight and even. But up close, you see what his hurried rhythm has wrought. In several places, the oakum is not packed tightly enough. You can see tiny, almost invisible gaps where the fibers have bunched up, leaving a hollow space underneath. You know with absolute certainty that under the pressure of the sea, these spots will weep, allowing a slow, persistent leak into the bilge. A petty part of you feels a spark of satisfaction. His arrogance has led to flawed work. If you say nothing, the flaw will be his alone to answer for when the ship is inspected, or worse, when it's at sea. It feels like a just reward for his earlier mockery. The master will see who is diligent and who is merely fast. This thought is tempting, a small, bitter prize offered up by your long-standing competition. The urge to simply walk away, leaving him to his fate, is strong. It would be so easy to say nothing at all. However, as you stand there, your gaze drifts from the flawed seam to the great curving expanse of the hull. You think of the immense weight of the keel beneath you, the perfect fit of the ribs you helped select, and the hours you spent shaping the very planks he is now carelessly sealing. This vessel is becoming more than just a collection of wood and rope. It is a single entity, a creation of shared labor, your labor. A hidden weakness anywhere is a weakness everywhere. The thought of a future crew, far out at sea, having to work the pumps constantly because of a flaw you knew about, settles uncomfortably in your mind. This feeling of responsibility for the ship itself wages a silent war against your personal pride. To let him fail is to let the ship fail in some small way. To help him is to offer a hand to someone who has only ever offered you scorn. You look at his tense shoulders as he works, the frustration clear even from behind. The ship deserves better.
The men who will sail her deserve better. Your own work deserves to be part of something strong and whole. The internal struggle ends not with a feeling of victory or defeat, but with a simple sense of what must be done. You choose the path of the craftsman over that of the rival. Walking over to your own toolkit, you pick up a different caulking iron, one with a slightly wider, flared tip designed for finishing. You approach him quietly, not with an air of superiority, but as a fellow apprentice. You don't point out the error directly. Instead, you hold out the tool. "I found this one works better for the final packing," you say, your voice even. It seems to spread the fibers more evenly just before the pitch goes on. He stops hammering and looks up, his expression a mixture of surprise and deep suspicion. He glances from your face to the tool, then back again. For a long moment, he says nothing. He looks down at his own work, his eyes tracing the seam with a new critical focus. He sees the gaps. You watch as understanding dawns, followed by a flush of embarrassment that he quickly hides. Without a word, he takes the iron from your hand, its weight a silent admission of his error. He doesn't thank you, but as he turns back to his work, his frantic pace is gone, replaced by a more deliberate and careful rhythm. Returning to your own section of the hull, the repetitive tap, tap, tap of your mallet feels different. It is no longer a solitary sound, but part of a larger, more coherent chorus. The harsh smell of the hot pitch seems less overpowering now, transformed into the scent of shared purpose, the very aroma of integrity. You know that no one else saw the exchange, and the master will never know of the small disaster you quietly helped avert. It is a secret held only by you, your rival, and the ship itself. Your quiet act has sealed more than just a wooden seam. It has bound you to the silent, unyielding code of the true shipwright. The great hull of the ship now rests complete, a wooden giant sleeping on the stocks. The raw, clean scent of fresh-cut oak has been replaced by something sharper and more clinging. Your new task is to make this giant breathe without drinking, to seal every seam against the relentless pressure of the sea. This process is called caulking, a job of patience and precision. You hold a bundle of oakum, which is simply old rope fibers soaked in tar, feeling its greasy, fibrous texture against your palms. With a small mallet and a wide-ended chisel, you begin the slow work of driving these fibers into the narrow gaps between the hull planks. The work is not heavy, but it is endless, and a profound sense of responsibility settles over you as you begin. The rhythm of the work soon takes over your thoughts. You find a steady pace, gather a length of oakum, twist it into a tight cord, and then tap, tap, tap with the mallet, forcing it deep into the seam. The sound is a constant, dull percussion along the length of the vessel, a sound you hear in your ears even when you pause. Soon, your fingers are black and sticky with tar. When you pause to wipe sweat from your brow, you leave a dark smudge on your skin.
Nearby, a brazier heats a large cauldron of pitch, a final sealant for the seams. The smell from it is thick and powerful, a smell that seems to coat the back of your throat and makes you swallow more often, your mouth feeling strangely dry despite the humidity coming off the nearby water. Because you were honest about your mistake with the adze weeks ago, the master shipwright has entrusted you with a critical section of the hull near the stern post where the currents will be strongest. The rival apprentice, by contrast, is working on the flatter, simpler midsection on the opposite side. From your position, you have a clear view of his progress. You notice he is moving much faster than anyone else, his mallet striking with a rapid, almost frantic energy. A part of you, the part that still remembers his taunts when your hands were soft and unskilled, feels a spark of satisfaction at your own methodical, trusted pace. You focus on your seam, ensuring the oakum is packed so tightly that not even a needle could find a way through. As you finish one long seam and prepare to start the next, you take a moment to stretch your back, your eyes scanning the vast curve of the hull. Your gaze naturally falls upon your rival's work. From this new angle, you see something that makes your stomach tighten. In his haste, he is not packing the oakum deeply enough. You can see small, almost invisible gaps, tiny shadows in the seam that a coat of black pitch might hide from the master's eye, but which the sea will surely find. The ocean is patient. It will press against that weak spot day after day, year after year, until a tiny trickle becomes a dangerous leak. The ship will be weaker because of his hurry. Your mind begins to race, torn between two currents. You could say nothing. His failure would be his own, and your own careful work would shine brighter by comparison. Perhaps the master would finally see who the more dedicated apprentice is. The memory of his earlier mockery fuels this thought, a bitter taste of potential revenge. Yet a stronger feeling pulls you in the other direction. You look at the ship, not just as a collection of timbers, but as a single entity. You helped lay its keel, its very soul. You helped choose the strong, curved ribs that give it shape. An injury to any part of it feels like an injury to the whole project, an injury to your own work. The ship deserves better than a hidden flaw born of pride and haste. You make your choice. Setting down your tools, you walk slowly around the stern, your boots crunching softly on the wood chips and discarded fibers covering the ground. The rival apprentice does not notice you at first, his head down, his arm a blur of motion. You wait until he pauses to grab another length of oakum. When he looks up and sees you, his expression immediately hardens, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. He expects a challenge or a criticism, and his posture becomes defensive. You keep your voice low, so only he can hear, ensuring this is not a public shaming, but a private word between builders. Your pace is impressive, you begin, not with an accusation, but with a simple statement of fact. He merely grunts in response, his suspicion unabated. You move closer and point not to his work, but to your own freshly caulked seam. The master showed me how the fibers must be packed so tight they become like the wood itself. He said the sea pushes hardest right here. You gestured to the curve of the hull, then glanced towards his section. It must be just as strong there, or the strain will not be shared. You do not say you are doing it wrong. Instead, you make it about the ship, about the shared enemy, the sea. He remains silent for a long moment, his eyes flicking from you to his own work, then back again. He walks a few paces down the plank he just finished and runs a calloused finger along the seam. He presses down hard, and you both see the oakum give way slightly, revealing one of the tiny gaps you had spotted from afar. A flicker of something, anger, embarrassment, perhaps even gratitude, crosses his face before he masks it. Without another word, he picks up his chisel and begins the tedious task of pulling out the improperly packed fibers from the last few feet of his work. He does not look at you again. You return to your own side of the hull, the familiar weight of the mallet feeling different in your hand. The tap, tap, tap no longer sounds like a solitary task, but part of a larger chorus, one that must be in harmony to succeed. A quiet, grudging respect has been forged in that tense moment of silence, a respect not for each other's speed, but for the integrity of the vessel itself. The rivalry has not vanished, but its nature has changed. It is no longer just about who is better, but about ensuring that what you build together is strong enough to survive its violent birth into the water. As the day concludes, you both work to seal your finished seams with hot pitch. You use a ladle to pour the black, steaming liquid into the grooves, watching as it fills every remaining crack and hardens into a tough, waterproof line. The sharp smell is the final act of this long day, the scent of a promise kept. Looking at the hull, now striped with these dark, clean lines, you know that a potential weakness has been mended. It is a repair that no one but you and your rival will ever know exists, a hidden strength buried deep within the ship's skin. The truth of this choice, sealed in tar and silence, will remain a part of the ship's story and yours.
The weeks that follow the planking are a lesson in a different kind of work, the work of waiting. The great curved hull, now a single unified body, rests upon the heavy timber stalks. It looks complete, a vessel dreaming of the sea, yet it is not ready. It must settle, a process the master shipwright calls finding its nature. Your days are spent not with the adze or hammer, but with your eyes and ears. You walk its perimeter, checking the fairness of its curves, feeling the seams for any sign of separation, and learning the patience that transforms a collection of wood into a ship. The work is quiet, a stark contrast to the harsh mix of sounds that defined the shipyard before. As the days turn to weeks, the hull is exposed to the moods of the weather. Rain darkens the fresh oak to a deep, wet brown, and you watch the water bead and run down its curved sides, a preview of its future life. When the sky is clear, you squint against the bright light reflecting off the water nearby, and the black pitch sealing the planks grows soft and sticky under your probing thumb. Movement in the shipyard seems to slow during the long, bright afternoons, and men seek the cool shadows cast by the finished hulls. During this time, you often find yourself simply standing near the vessel, a silent guardian, feeling a sense of ownership you have never known before. It is more than just a job. A part of you is now bound to this frame. Then, one quiet afternoon, you hear it. It is a sound so faint you almost dismiss it as the cry of a distant gull or the creak of a cargo crane. But there it is again,
a low, complaining groan, seeming to come from deep within the forward part of the hull. It is the sound of immense pressure, of wood fibers straining against their bonds. A cold knot forms in your stomach as you remember the choice you made weeks ago, standing in the timber yard with the master. The merchant's pressure, the desire to move forward, the 2 stacks of wood. You recall the feel of the timber you selected, the reasoning you gave. That decision is no longer a memory. It has found a voice.
Choice, consequence. If you chose the greener, faster timber in Chapter 4, the groan is a personal accusation. You press your ear against the warm planks and feel a slight vibration that travels through your skull. The sound is strongest here, right where the frames you chose are locked into place. You see it now with agonizing clarity. The rivet heads, those small iron buttons holding the overlapping planks together, sit just a little too proud, pushed outward by the wood shrinking as it dries. Your choice for speed has introduced a sickness into the ship's bones. You find the master shipwright not with a question, but with a confession already forming on your lips. He follows you back to the hull, listens for a long moment, and his weathered face shows no surprise, only a deep, weary understanding. Choice consequence, if you chose the properly seasoned timber in Chapter 4. The ship remains silent, strong, and still. The groan you hear comes from a smaller trading vessel being built further down the slipway. The master shipwright finds you during your inspection and nods toward the other ship. "Hear that?" he asks, his voice low. That is the sound of haste. He leads you to the groaning vessel, pointing out how its forward planks are straining, the rivets sitting proud and uneven. Their merchant was in a hurry, he says, his eyes meeting yours. They did not. The relief that washes over you is immense, but you also feel a chill, understanding how close you came to making the same error. The lesson is just as powerful, but it is learned through another's mistake, not your own. Regardless of its source, the master uses the moment to teach. Wood is a living thing, even after the tree has fallen, he explains, running a calloused hand over the strained planks. It holds water. As it dries, it shrinks, it twists. A ship built of green wood will tear itself apart before it ever touches the sea. He tells you that some shipwrights in other lands argue that a little flexibility is good, that a ship that can bend with the waves is stronger. They are fools, he says flatly. A ship must be a fortress. Its strength is in its refusal to bend. This is the core of his belief, a principle as unyielding as the heart of an ancient oak. The ship's frame must be a single, solid piece, a belief held by the guild for generations. For the hull that groans under the strain, the solution is difficult and laborious. You are tasked with helping to fix the flaw, learning a lesson in repair that is more valuable than any success. The work involves crawling into the dark, cramped space inside the hull. The air is still and smells of sawdust and pine tar. Here, you must fit new timbers, called clamps, alongside the stressed frames. These are heavy internal braces, carefully shaped to fit the exact curve of the hull, designed to add strength from within. You hold them in place while others drill and hammer, the jarring impacts echoing in the enclosed space until your ears ring. This added support saves the hull, but it comes at a cost. The master makes you measure the interior space before and after the repair. The new clamps are thick, stealing precious room from the cargo hold. Every inch of space is silver for the merchant, he tells you, his voice devoid of judgment. This ship will sail, but it will earn less over its lifetime. It will be heavier and a little slower in the wind. It is a permanent, visible reminder of a single choice made weeks before. The ship is no longer perfect, but it is now safe, its weakness buttressed by new strength. This process teaches you that building is not just about getting it right the first time, but knowing how to make it right when it goes wrong. The work is humbling. You see the rival apprentice, the one whose caulking you may have corrected, fitting out the interior of a different ship, his work unimpeded. There is no groan from his vessel. He glances over, and you can't read his expression. Is it pity or smug satisfaction? It doesn't matter. Your focus is on the grain of the wood in your hands, the precise angle of the cut, the solid feel of a joint well made. You are fixing a deep flaw, and in doing so, you are learning the ship's structure in a way that those who only see perfection never will. As you finish the last brace, you run your hand over the smooth, new timber nestled against the old. The groaning has stopped. The hull has fallen silent once more. But it is a different silence now. It is not the quiet of perfection, but the quiet of a wound that has been mended. You look at the network of braces, the scars of your education, and the heavy timbers that saved the ship. You have learned more from this flaw than you could have from a flawless build, seeing the very bones of the vessel and understanding the forces that try to pull them apart. You have felt the ship breathe, heard it cry out, and helped it heal. You have become party to its deepest secrets. With the great mast now standing tall against the sky, a silent promise of voyages to come, your work shifts. You leave behind the familiar world of splintered wood and ringing hammers for the quieter, more contained space of the sail loft. This vast room sits above the main workshops, and climbing the steep ladder into it feels like entering another realm entirely. Here, the dominant smell is not of oak or tar, but of dry canvas, sharp beeswax, and the dusty scent of coiled rope. The light is softer, filtered through high, wide windows that look out over the entire shipyard, giving you a new perspective on the vessel you have helped create from its very spine. This new environment demands a different kind of strength, one found not in the shoulders and back, but in the fingers and the eyes. The sailmaker, a man with faded blue eyes and hands as nimble as a weaver's, begins to teach you the art of the rope. You learn to splice, a way of joining two ropes by unlaying their strands and weaving them together to form a bond stronger than any knot. Your fingers, accustomed to the solid heft of an adze, feel clumsy as you work the abrasive hemp fibers, and soon the pads of your fingertips are raw and tender. Yet you persevere, finding a quiet satisfaction in the tight, clean pattern of a finished splice.
Alongside this, you work with the sailcloth itself. It is an immense landscape of heavy, stiff fabric laid out across the vast floor. Moving it requires several apprentices, and the sound of it dragging across the boards is like the whisper of a coming tide.
You learn to push a thick, triangular needle through the dense weave, your palm protected by a small leather tool. The motion is repetitive, stitching reinforcing patches and securing the bolt ropes that will line the edges of the sail, taking the primary strain from the wind. It is patient work, and as you do it, you begin to understand that a ship is not one creation, but a collection of many different crafts, all bound together by a common purpose. Finally, the day arrives to hoist the great square sail for the first time. The entire thing, folded into a massive, heavy bundle, is hauled from the loft and brought to the ship. The air is tense with a kind of nervous energy as it is attached to the yard arm, the long wooden spar that will hold it aloft. Ropes are run, men take their positions, and at the master's signal, you join the others in pulling. Slowly, painstakingly, the pale canvas unfolds as it rises up the mast, a giant wing preparing for its first flight. It is a moment of pure triumph, seeing the ship finally look as it should, ready to catch the wind. It is during this process, as you secure a line near the top corner of the sail, that you notice it. Your eyes, now trained to see the fine details of stitching, catch a section that is uneven. The thread is thinner here, the stitches wider apart and less regular than on the rest of the sail. It is not a gaping hole, but a subtle flaw, an area of weakness spanning several feet. You run your hand over it, feeling the lack of tension compared to the surrounding seams. A cold knot forms in your stomach. This is the part of the sail that will take immense strain when the wind is high. You immediately find the sailmaker and point it out, keeping your voice low. He squints up at the flaw, then shrugs, brushing off your concern. "It's fine," he says, his voice dismissive. "A little irregularity, nothing more. It will hold." But his eyes do not quite meet yours. Nearby, the merchant who funded the entire project watches the proceedings with an impatient expression. He sees the nearly finished ship, smells the profit on the tide, and any hint of delay makes him scowl. He has already been pressuring the master to hasten the final preparations for the maiden voyage. The merchant overhears your hushed conversation and strides over, his fine boots loud on the deck. "Is there a problem?" he asks, his gaze sharp and questioning. Before you can fully explain, the sailmaker cuts in, assuring him it is a minor matter, already resolved. You feel the pressure from all sides, a force as real as the wind that will soon fill this very canvas. You remember the sound of the greener timbers groaning under the sun, a lesson in the high cost of taking the faster, easier path. That mistake was a matter of internal structure. This one is written on the very face of the ship for the elements to test. To insist on the repair would be a major undertaking. It would mean lowering the yard arm, unfastening the massive sail, and hauling it all the way back to the loft. It would mean a delay of days, perhaps even a week, and the merchant's open fury. The sailmaker would be shamed, and your relationship with his workshop soured. Yet, to let it pass is to knowingly set sail with a hidden weakness, a quiet prayer that the winds will always be gentle and the storms will always pass you by. It is to trust the dismissive words of one man over the evidence of your own trained eyes. You stand there on the deck, the shouts of the riggers echoing around you, and weigh the cost of time against the cost of safety. The merchant's glare is a physical weight, and the sailmaker's denial hangs in the air between you. Part of you wants to simply nod and step away, to let the matter be decided by those with more authority. But you are the one who saw it. The knowledge of that weak seam now belongs to you. After a long moment, you find your voice and make your decision, knowing it will shape not only the immediate future, but your reputation and the fate of the ship itself. The choice, once made, settles within you, either as a stone of dread or a pillar of resolve. If you accept the sailmaker's word, the work continues, and you try to push the image of those loose stitches from your mind, though it reappears whenever you look up at the mast. If you insist on the repair, a bitter argument follows. The merchant storms away in a fury, but the master shipwright, hearing the dispute, comes to inspect the flaw himself. He runs his own calloused thumb over the seam, his expression unreadable, before giving the final order that proves you right or wrong. Whatever the outcome, the sun is lower in the sky by the time the work is done for the day. The great sail, either flawed or being repaired, casts a long shadow across the deck. You learn that leadership is not merely about giving orders, but about seeing what others miss, and having the courage to speak for the good of the whole vessel, even when it is the harder path. It is a lesson far more complex than shaping wood or splicing rope, a skill that cannot be taught with tools, only learned through moments like this.
As the shipyard quiets and the crews head home, you remain for a moment, looking up at the silhouette of the ship against the evening sky. You think about the countless small decisions made by many hands that are now woven into its structure. From the choice of wood for the tree nails to the rake of the mast and the integrity of a single seam in the sail, each choice is a thread in a much larger tapestry. You are no longer just an apprentice following instructions. You are becoming one of the weavers. You wonder how many such choices lie hidden in every ship that leaves this harbor. How much of a vessel's fate is determined not by the storms it meets, but by the quiet moments of compromise or conviction in the yard before it ever tastes the salt. The ship seems to hold the answer in its silent wooden form, a testament to the character of its builders. You realize a ship is not just built of wood and iron and canvas, but of the integrity of the people who laid their hands upon it. You carry the weight of this day's decision with you as the first stars begin to appear over the harbor. The journey of building the ship is almost over, but the journey of understanding what it means to be responsible for it has only just begun. The constant noise of the shipyard fades, one tool at a time, until an unusual quiet settles over the space. The rhythmic rasp of saws, the sharp clang of hammers, the shouts of men, all have gone silent. This collective hush draws everyone from their tasks, pulling them toward the newly completed hull that rests on the stocks, its raw wood glowing in the afternoon light. Lying beside it, stretching nearly the length of the vessel itself, is the mast. It is a single magnificent pine, stripped of its branches and bark, shaped to a gentle taper. Its sheer size, now that it is on the ground, seems impossible. It looks less like a part of a ship and more like a fallen forest giant, waiting for a final ceremony. All work has stopped for this. This is the day the ship receives its heart.
You find your position among the dozens of men and older apprentices lining a series of immense hemp ropes. These ropes are connected to a complex system of levers and temporary supports designed to raise the colossal timber. The rope in your hands is thick and bristly, its fibers digging into your palms, even through the calluses you have earned. A breeze drifts in from the harbor, and for the first time today, you can distinguish the clean, sharp smell of the sea from the familiar scents of sawdust and hot pitch. It is a powerful reminder of where this vessel is destined to go. The master shipwright walks the length of the mast, his hand resting on the wood, his expression one of deep concentration, as if he is having a silent conversation with the tree. He pauses near you, his eyes meeting yours for a moment. There is no praise or criticism in his gaze, only a shared understanding of the work that has led to this point. You recall the lesson of the strained hull, the soft groaning sound that followed your choice of greener wood, a constant, quiet reminder of the consequences that live inside the timber. Or perhaps you remember the solid silence of the well-seasoned hull, a testament to patience that earned you a rare approving nod. Whichever memory it is, it sharpens your focus. The master moves to the head of the assembly, raising his hand not for silence, which he already has, but for attention. His voice is not loud, but it carries. "She is but a body now," he says, his voice rough like old rope. "Today, we give her a soul that reaches for the sky. Every man pulls as one. We are not 30 men. We are one great arm." The hand drops. A foreman bellows a single, guttural command that is more a rhythm than a word. As one, you and the men around you lean back, putting your entire weight into the rope. The strain is immediate and immense, a burning sensation that travels from your hands, up your arms, and into your shoulders and back. Your knuckles turn white. Around you, the air fills with the collective grunts and strained breathing of the crew. The only sound is human effort and the groaning protest of the ropes as they take the immense weight. The mast, which had seemed so permanent and heavy on the ground, lifts by a hand's breadth, then another. It feels less like you are lifting it and more like you are trying to hold the world still while the mast decides to rise. Slowly, agonizingly, the great spar begins its ascent. It swings into the air, a terrifying and beautiful sight against the vast open sky. It sways, a massive pendulum that seems to defy the small efforts of the men holding it. You feel a knot of fear tighten in your stomach, a single slipped grip, a single frayed rope, and this entire effort could end in a splintering crash that would not only destroy the mast, but could crush the hull itself. You see the rival apprentice on an opposing rope, his face a mask of concentration, sweat plastering his hair to his forehead. You remember your choice to either point out his flawed caulking or let it pass. If you helped him, there is a shared glance of mutual reliance now, a silent agreement to hold fast.
If you did not, his eyes are fixed forward, a man alone in his labor. With painstaking care, the base of the mast is guided by another team of men toward a large, square hole cut into the main deck. Below that hole lies the keel, where a specially carved block of oak, the mast step, awaits. This is the most delicate part of the entire operation. The foremen no longer shout, their commands becoming a series of sharp hand signals as the mast's base hovers over its destination. You hold your breath, your muscles screaming in protest as the ropes are eased out inch by inch. There is a deep, resonant thump that you feel more in your feet than you hear with your ears. It is the sound of the mast finally settling into its step, connecting the keel to the sky. A great cheer erupts from everyone, a release of tension so profound it leaves you feeling lightheaded. The ropes are secured to hold the mast in place, though the real stability will come from the rigging. The master shipwright beckons you forward, away from the celebrating crew. He leads you to the base of the newly stepped mast, placing his hand on the wood. It is stepped, he says simply, but it is not yet set. Its final angle, its rake, is a decision that will define how she behaves on the water. He explains that a perfectly vertical mast, straight up and down, creates a balanced and stable ship. This is ideal for a merchant vessel carrying heavy, shifting cargo, as it is predictable and steady in most seas. However, it also makes the ship less nimble, slower to turn. This method of ensuring stability was a point of pride for many guilds. But, he continues, his gaze fixed on the top of the mast far above, some captains prefer a slight backward rake. He uses his hand to show a gentle tilt. This moves the sail's center of effort. It can make a ship faster, more agile. She will answer the helm quicker, like a spirited horse. But it can also make her more difficult to handle in rough weather, putting different strains on the hull and rigging. A demanding ship for a demanding captain. The choice he presents is not just technical, it feels fundamental. He is asking you to decide the very character of the vessel you have poured your sweat into. Historical accounts from this time are often unclear, with some scholars arguing that any rake was an accident of construction, while others insist it was a deliberate and sophisticated choice made by the master builder. You find yourself torn. The memory of the whole timbers dictates your thoughts. If you chose the greener wood, you can almost hear the faint groans under the strain of a hot day. The thought of adding the dynamic stress of a raked mast to that potential weakness fills you with caution. A stable, predictable ship seems the wiser course, a vessel that forgives small flaws. But if you chose the perfectly seasoned timber, you have confidence in the strength of the hull you built. That solid, silent strength invites you to be bolder, to create a ship that is not just a carrier of goods, but a swift and responsive vessel that can outrun a closing storm or catch a fleeting wind. The merchant wants his cargo delivered, but a faster voyage means more profit and less time at the mercy of the sea.
The master shipwright waits, his silence a heavy cloak. He is not testing your knowledge of wood anymore. He is testing your judgment. This decision will not be felt today or tomorrow, but months from now, in a high wind with a heavy sea running, when the feel of the tiller in a captain's hands is the only thing that matters. You consider the crew that will one day sail her, the storms they might face,
and the merchant's ledger books. It is a balance between safety and performance, between caution and ambition. The entirety of your apprenticeship seems to have led to this single, pivotal choice. Finally, your mind settles. You look the master in the eye and give him your answer, not just the choice, but the reason behind it. A ship's first duty is to bring her crew home safely, you might say, your voice steadier than you expected. The hull has known stresses. We will build for stability. Or, perhaps, you find a different conviction. We built her strong from the keel up. She was made to be swift. Give her the rake. A fast ship spends less time in danger. The master listens to your reasoning without interruption, his expression unreadable. He considers his words for a long moment, then gives a slow, deliberate nod. It is not an agreement or disagreement, but an acceptance. You have made your choice, and you have owned the logic behind it. He turns and relays your decision to the rigging foreman, who begins shouting a new set of orders. Men scurry into action, adjusting the massive temporary ropes, preparing to pull the mast into its final, permanent alignment before they secure the great shrouds, the heavy ropes that will hold it fast against the force of the wind and waves for years to come. As the riggers begin their work, you step back. The adrenaline of the great lift and the weight of your decision leaving you feeling strangely calm. The other apprentices and workers are already returning to their stations. The momentous occasion now over. The sounds of the shipyard slowly rebuilding their familiar chorus. But you stay for a moment longer, watching the men secure the base of the mast. The ship no longer looks like a simple hull. It now has a spine that reaches for the clouds, a declaration of its purpose. The weight of that single towering spar and the character you have chosen for it settles into your understanding of what it truly means to build a ship. With the great mast now firmly in place, secured at the precise angle you chose, a new phase of work begins. The focus of the shipyard shifts from the heavy, resonant work of timber to the finer, more intricate tasks of rigging. Consequently, your own responsibilities change, pulling you away from the familiar scent of sawdust and pitch. You are sent to the sail loft, a vast, cavernous building set back from the water's edge. The space inside is wide and open, the floorboards worn smooth by years of dragging enormous bolts of cloth. Here, the primary scent is not of wood, but of dry canvas, beeswax, and the dusty, fibrous smell of new rope. It is a world of different textures and skills, and you feel like an apprentice all over again. Your first lessons in this new environment involve learning to work with rope. You spend days learning to splice, the methodical process of weaving the end of one rope into another to create a join stronger than any knot. The coarse hemp fibers chafe your fingers, leaving them raw and tender in a way that even the rough bark of oak never did. The sailmaker, a man with faded blue eyes and hands that are a web of scars from errant needles, shows you how to unlay the strands, tuck them under and over, and pull them tight until the two pieces become one. He teaches you that every rope on the ship, from the massive stays that support the mast to the simple lines that will control the sail, depend on these reliable connections. This painstaking work requires a different kind of strength, one of patience and precision rather than pure force. Building on this foundation of knots and splices, you are finally introduced to the sail itself. It lies spread across the floor of the loft, a sea of stiff, off-white canvas that seems to swallow the light from the high windows. It is a single, immense square of cloth, pieced together from countless smaller sections. The sailmaker walks you along its edges, explaining how each seam is double-stitched and reinforced with a leather strip called a bolt rope to prevent tearing. You run your hand over the surface, feeling the stiff, waxy coating that helps it shed water. The sheer scale of it is difficult to comprehend. This single piece of fabric will be the ship's engine, its heart, capturing the invisible power of the wind to move your creation across the sea. You begin to understand that a ship is not just a hull, but a delicate balance of many different crafts. Finally, the day arrives to deliver the sail to the ship. It is carried by a dozen men, folded into a massive, awkward bundle that requires all their coordinated effort to move. Down at the bustling dock, the merchant who funded the project is waiting, his fine clothes a stark contrast to the practical attire of the workers. His presence creates a low hum of anxiety. His impatience is well known, and the project is already behind the planned schedule. As the crew begins the complex process of hoisting the great square sail up the mast, using a web of ropes and pulleys, you watch with a critical eye, your new knowledge making you see things you would have missed only weeks before. As the sail unfurls against the sky, a magnificent sight, your gaze catches on something wrong. High up, near the top corner, a section of stitching looks different from the rest. It is uneven, the stitches looser and more widely spaced than the tight, uniform work elsewhere. As a breeze catches the canvas, that small section ripples and puckers in a way the rest of the sail does not. It is a subtle flaw, one that most might overlook, but your training in precision, from shaping tree nails to splicing rope, makes it stand out to you like a scar. You feel a cold knot form in your stomach. This is a weakness, a hidden danger in the part of the ship that will take the most strain. You quickly point it out to the sailmaker, who squints up at it, his expression hardening. He insists it will hold, that it is a minor cosmetic issue and nothing more. The merchant, overhearing your concern, walks over, his face a mask of irritation. He dismisses your observation immediately, speaking of deadlines, favorable tides, and the cost of any further delays. The ship must sail, he declares, his voice leaving no room for argument. He looks from you to the sailmaker, clearly expecting the matter to be dropped. The pressure from him is immense, a tangible force pushing you to ignore what you see, to fall silent and let the work continue without interruption. This sudden conflict leaves you feeling cornered. To send the sail back would be a monumental task. It would mean unrigging the complex network of ropes, lowering the massive yardarm, and likely losing days of work. Such a delay would infuriate the merchant and could damage your standing, making you seem difficult and inexperienced.
Yet your hands still remember the feel of a perfect splice, your eyes the true line of a well-hewn timber. Every instinct you have developed during your long apprenticeship screams that a flaw, no matter how small, is an invitation for disaster when you are at the mercy of the open sea. Your mind races, weighing the merchant's anger against the potential fury of a storm. You think of the crew who will have to climb that rigging in high winds, trusting their lives to every stitch and every rope. Is it worth the risk to avoid a confrontation now? A part of you wants to defer to the more experienced sailmaker and the powerful merchant, to simply nod and accept their judgment. Another, stronger part, born of the responsibility you feel for the ship you helped build from the keel up, feels a duty to speak. You look from the flawed sail to the impatient merchant to the proud sailmaker. You realize that your choice is not just about a few loose threads. It is about whether you will be ruled by the pressures of commerce or by the principles of your craft. You take a deep breath, the scent of salt and tar a familiar comfort. You have learned that a ship is a system where every part depends on every other. Acknowledging this truth, you make your decision. You choose to stand by your observation, insisting that the sail must be repaired, explaining calmly but firmly to the furious merchant that the safety of the vessel and its crew cannot be compromised. The world you know is no longer just the predictable grain of wood and the solid weight of iron. It has expanded to include the feel of wind on canvas and the pull of a rope in your hands. You have seen how a single overlooked detail can ripple outward, affecting the integrity of the entire structure. The yard is no longer just a place of labor, but a space filled with calculations and compromises, where the demands of money and time press against the unyielding laws of the sea. You find yourself changed by these new pressures, your understanding of what it means to build a ship now layered with a heavier kind of knowledge. Your work with wood is done. The ship, a skeleton of oak and pine, now fully fleshed out with planks and sealed with pitch, sits complete in the water, tied to the dock. Its bare mast, a single great tree pointing at the sky, looks unfinished without its source of power. Consequently, your training moves from the shipyard to the sail loft, a vast wooden hall near the docks. The moment you step inside, a dry, dusty scent coats the inside of your nose, a mix of heavy canvas, beeswax, and the sharp smell of rope. It is a world away from the clean bite of fresh-cut oak or the sticky heat of tar. Here, the work is quieter, more focused, and the scale of it is humbling. Stretched across the entire floor is the ship's mainsail, a single enormous piece of off-white cloth that seems bigger than the shipyard itself. It is an ocean of stiff fabric, and walking its edge feels like pacing the shore of a pale sea. The sailmaker, a man with thin, nimble fingers and eyes that constantly measure and assess, shows you how to use a sailor's palm, a stiff leather strap that fits over your hand and has a small metal plate embedded in it. This tool, he explains, allows you to push the thick, triangular sail needles through the dense layers of canvas without driving them through your own skin. The work is different from shaping wood. It requires not brute strength, but a patient, steady pressure that soon makes your wrist and forearm ache in a new and unfamiliar way.
Your first tasks are simple but essential. You learn to splice rope, weaving the ends of two thick lines together to make one, your fingers growing raw from the abrasive hemp fibers. The feel of it is like rubbing your skin with coarse sand, but the result is a knot-free join stronger than the rope itself. You also learn to whip the ends of ropes with waxed twine to prevent them from fraying, a repetitive motion that becomes almost meditative. All around you is the quiet industry of the loft, the rustle and snap of canvas as it's folded, the low murmur of the sailmaker giving instructions, and the rhythmic thump-thump of others using their palms to drive needles home. It is a place of meticulous detail, where a single weak stitch can doom a vessel as surely as a cracked keel. After days of this work, the massive square sail is finally declared ready. It is folded by a dozen men into a heavy, dense bundle, then carried on their shoulders down to the docks. The process of hoisting it up the mast and securing it to the yardarm, the huge horizontal spar of wood it hangs from, is an all-day affair, involving a complex web of ropes and pulleys. The master shipwright watches the entire process, his presence a reminder of the standards you must uphold. It was your past honesty, your willingness to admit to a mistake with the adze so long ago, that earned you his trust to oversee these final critical stages. He expects you to see things others might miss, a responsibility that settles on your shoulders with a familiar weight. As the sail is unfurled for the first time, a magnificent sheet against the gray sky, you spot it. High up, near the top corner, where the strain will be greatest, is a section of stitching. From the deck, it is almost invisible, but your eyes, now trained to see the small details, notice the uneven pattern. The thread is thinner there, and the stitches are spaced wider than anywhere else on the sail. You feel a cold knot form in your stomach. While the sailmaker directs the final adjustments from the dock, you point it out to one of the senior sailors, who squints and nods grimly. He agrees. The seam is weak. This observation confirmed, you know you must act.
You make your way down the gangplank to where the sailmaker stands with the merchant who funded the ship's construction. You calmly explain what you have found, pointing to the flawed section high above. The sailmaker scoffs, his pride wounded. It is nothing, he insists, not meeting your eyes. It will hold twice the wind we'll ever see. Before you can argue, the merchant steps forward, his face turning red with impatience. Delays, always delays. We are meant to catch the morning tide. The ship is fast. You yourself chose the backward rake of the mast for speed. Are we to let her sit here over a few loose threads? He gestures dismissively, as if waving away a fly. His words put you in an impossible position. The pressure from him is immense, a wave of commercial urgency that threatens to sweep away your caution. The sailmaker, unwilling to admit his workshop produced a flawed product, offers you an easy path. Simply agree and move on. Part of you wants to do just that, to avoid the conflict and the merchant's growing anger. Yet, the memory of the green timber groaning in the sun serves as a powerful warning. A small weakness, ignored for the sake of speed, can grow into a disaster at sea. The lives of the crew you will soon command depend on the choices you make right now, standing on this dock. You feel torn between the merchant's demands for profit and your own deep-seated duty to the ship and its future crew.
To lower the sail, repair the seam, and rehoist it would take at least 2 days, maybe 3. The merchant would be furious, and the favorable tide would be lost. On the other hand, to leave it as it is feels like a betrayal of every lesson you have learned. It would mean putting to sea with a secret flaw, a hidden weakness you would be acutely aware of every time the wind rose. The faces of the sailors on the deck, trusting you to make the right call, flash through your mind.
You take a deep breath. The scent of salt and drying nets suddenly sharp in your awareness. You turn to the merchant, your voice steady despite the pounding in your chest. You stand by your observation, insisting that the sail must be repaired. You explain calmly but firmly to the furious merchant that the safety of the vessel and its crew cannot be compromised for the sake of a few days' time. You are not asking for his permission. You are informing him of what must be done. For a moment, he seems ready to explode, his face a mask of rage. But then he looks past you, at the master shipwright, who has been watching from a distance. The old man gives a slow, deliberate nod of approval. The merchant sputters, defeated. The argument is over. Your decision is made. As the crew begins the laborious process of lowering the massive sail once more, the sailmaker approaches you. He does not apologize, but he quietly says, "You have a good eye. It is the work of a new apprentice. I will see to it myself." In his brief statement, you hear a grudging respect, an acknowledgement that your standards are as high as his own. The conflict has passed, but it leaves a lasting impression on you. You have asserted your authority not through anger or rank, but through a commitment to the integrity of the vessel. Over the next 2 days, you remain at the dock, overseeing the repair. You watch as the sailmaker himself, with his own needle and palm, carefully unpicks the weak stitches and replaces them with a double-thick waxed thread, his movements precise and efficient. It is a lesson in both craftsmanship and humility. The merchant avoids you, his displeasure a silent presence around the shipyard. But the sailors treat you with a newfound respect. They see that you prioritize their safety over a schedule, and a quiet bond of trust begins to form before you have even left the harbor. When the repaired sail is finally hoisted again, it hangs perfectly. The flawed seam is now the strongest part of the entire sheet, a dark, thick line of thread that stands as a testament to your difficult choice. Looking up at it, you feel no triumph, only a quiet sense of rightness. The ship is stronger for the delay. The crew is safer. The weight of command feels heavy, but it is a weight you are learning to carry. This burden of command, with all its difficult choices, has become an undeniable part of who you are. The sky, once a predictable canvas of blue and white, has shifted to a bruised purple along the horizon. You feel a change not just in the light, but in the very movement of the sea beneath you. The gentle, rocking rhythm that has lulled you for days is gone, replaced by a deep, unsettling swell that lifts the entire ship and holds it for a moment before letting it fall into the trough with a heavy shudder. Your crew, the small group of grim veterans you chose for their experience, moves about the deck with a new urgency, their eyes constantly scanning the darkening water and the sky. They secure barrels, check the lashings on the small boat, and speak to each other in low, clipped tones. There is no panic,
only a grim preparation that you find more unsettling than any loud display of fear. This deep rolling of the sea sends a vibration through the ship's frame, a low hum you feel in the soles of your feet. It is a reminder of the choice you made in the timber yard, when you argued for the properly seasoned oak for the ship's ribs. You recall the master shipwright's quiet nod of approval as you insisted on quality over speed. And now, with the ocean preparing to test your work, a small part of you finds comfort in that memory. The hull feels solid and silent, its timbers settled and strong, not emitting the worrisome groans you heard from other ships built in haste. This foundation of good wood is the first line of defense against what is coming, a decision made on land that will now have its reckoning at sea. Then the wind arrives. It is not a gradual increase, but a sudden, violent blow, as if a giant hand has struck the vessel. The force of it pushes you back a step, and the air is instantly filled with a high, mournful shriek as it tears through the rigging. A sheet of cold spray, heavy as a thrown bucket of water, crashes over the bow and sweeps across the deck, drenching you to the bone in an instant. The taste of salt is sharp and bitter in your mouth. You grab a hold of the thick railing, your knuckles turning white as the ship leans hard, its timbers groaning under the immense pressure. All around you, the world dissolves into a churning chaos of gray waves and white foam, the horizon completely gone. Your eyes instinctively fly upward to the single great square sail. You watch the thick canvas snap taut, straining against the ropes with a sound like a thunderclap. Every fiber of the sail, every line of stitching is now being tested by the storm's full fury. A flicker of memory brings you back to the sail loft, to the furious face of the merchant as you pointed out the flawed seam and refused to accept the sail. The delay it caused felt immense then, a mountain of trouble. But now, as the sail holds firm against a gust that seems powerful enough to rip the mast from the deck, you understand its true worth. Your insistence on proper repair was not about thread and canvas. It was about this exact moment, ensuring the ship's one great lung would not fail when it was needed most. While the sail holds, the sea finds other ways to attack. A sailor, his face pale and streaked with salt, scrambles toward you, his feet slipping on the slick, angled deck. He shouts to be heard over the roar of the wind, his voice thin and desperate. "The bilge, Captain! It's filling fast!" The words send a cold dread through you, a feeling worse than the chill of the seawater soaking your clothes. It is the consequence of a choice you did not make, a failure you let slide. You remember the rival apprentice, his hurried work caulking the seams, the small gaps you noticed and chose to ignore. That small trickle of water in the harbor, a minor annoyance then, has been pried open by the storm's power. It is now a flood, a relentless flow of the ocean into the belly of your ship.
Your veteran crew, however, does not wait for a full command. Seeing the urgency, two of them are already opening the hatch to the hold, organizing a line to begin bailing. Their movements are efficient, born of countless storms before this one. They work with a grim rhythm, their faces set, their fear channeled into hard, repetitive labor. Their competence is a small island of order in the chaos, and it is a direct result of your decision to hire experience over cheap enthusiasm. You realize that a crew of novices would have broken by now, their panic adding to the danger. These men, though their faces show the strain, meet the crisis with hardened resolve, giving you the precious moments needed to think. The ship is growing heavier. You can feel it in the way she responds to the waves. Sluggish, slow to rise, taking more and more water over her sides with each crashing swell. The bailing is not enough. The sea is entering faster than your crew can throw it out. Your first mate, a man whose face is a roadmap of scars from a life at sea, grips your arm. His voice is rough, but his eyes are clear. "She's riding too low, Captain. She'll be swamped if we don't lighten her." He does not need to explain what that means. His gaze shifts for a moment toward the main hatch, toward the valuable cargo stored below. The conflict tears through you, a force as violent as the storm outside. On one side is the merchant's wealth, the bolts of cloth, the barrels of wine, the entire purpose of this voyage. Your reputation, your future as a captain, is tied to that cargo. To lose it is to fail in your primary duty. On the other side are the faces of your crew, men who are fighting for their lives because you are their captain. You see their strained muscles, their desperate work, and you understand that their survival rests entirely on your next command. The thought rises, stark and clear. What is the true purpose of a ship? Is it to carry cargo, or is it to carry its crew safely home?
You look at the next wave, a monstrous wall of dark water rising before the ship. The vessel feels like it is sinking beneath you, its buoyancy lost. There is no more time for debate. The ledger book in your mind, full of profit and loss, burns away, leaving only the raw, immediate reality of survival. The lives of these men are worth more than any worldly goods. The decision, once agonizing, becomes simple. You turn to the first mate, your voice raw but steady over the howling wind. "Jettison the cargo, all of it, now!" He does not hesitate. He bellows the order, and the crew moves with a new, desperate purpose. They wrestle heavy crates and barrels up from the hold, their feet sliding on the wet deck. Each one is a struggle against the violent motion of the ship. One by one, you watch the merchant's fortune disappear into the churning, indifferent sea. There is a splintering crash as a crate of pottery hits the railing and bursts apart. A wine barrel rolls across the deck, then plunges into a wave and is gone. With each loss, you feel a painful wrench, but you also feel the ship changing beneath you. It is a subtle shift at first, but then you feel it clearly. The ship, freed from hundreds of pounds of dead weight, begins to rise more quickly to the waves. It no longer plows through them, threatening to submerge, but instead climbs their steep faces. The deck is still awash with water, the wind still shrieks, but the feeling of sinking, of inevitable doom, has lessened. You are not safe, not yet, but you have given your vessel and your crew a chance to live. The sea still rages, but you have made your sacrifice to it, trading wealth for life.
As the last of the cargo vanishes overboard, an exhausted quiet settles over the crew. They stand, braced against the storm, their work done. The bailing continues, but now it seems possible they might win. You stand at the helm, your hands gripping the tiller, feeling the renewed life in the ship's response. The storm has not broken, but the crisis has. You have faced the ultimate test of command, where the choices are not between good and bad, but between terrible and worse. Looking out at the unforgiving sea, you feel the profound weight of your decision. You have felt the lives of your crew in your hands, a burden far heavier than any timber or coin. And so, our journey through the world of medieval maritime construction comes to a close for tonight. The ring of the broad axe on oak and the rhythmic tap of the caulking mallet have faded with the light. In the quiet of the shipyard, all that remains is the gentle scent of pine tar and fresh wood shavings on the cool air. Imagine the great hull we followed from blueprint to frame. Its curved ribs now set in place, resting silently under the first stars. Each timber, carefully chosen and shaped by hand, has found its purpose. Every seam is sealed, making the vessel whole, secure, and ready for the tide. Just as the shipwrights now lay down their tools and turn toward home, let your own day's efforts settle into stillness. Allow the quiet satisfaction of their finished craft to carry you gently toward slumber. May your rest be as deep and sound as the great keel we imagine tonight. Sleep peacefully.